woke up to silence. A silence so thick it pressed against his ears like water, heavy and absolute. Daniel opened his eyes and saw a ceiling, white, cracked, and completely unfamiliar. The stale smell of dust and decay hung in the air, thick and cloying. He sat up slowly, his body protesting with a deep, bone-weary ache. His limbs felt heavy, stiff, and they trembled as though he hadn't moved in years. He was in a bed he didn't recognize, in a room he'd never seen, inside a house he was certain he'd never stepped foot in. The room was old, a relic from another time. The wallpaper, once perhaps elegant, was now peeling away from the walls in long curling strips. The curtains, which might have been a cheerful color, were yellowed and brittle with age. Even the sunlight that slipped through the cracks in the fabric felt weak, gray, and cold, offering no warmth, no comfort. He tried to speak, to call out, but his voice was a stranger to him. "Hello," he whispered, the sound emerging as a hoarse, raspy croak, barely audible even to himself. No one answered. The silence simply swallowed his voice whole. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and tried to stand, but his muscles gave way immediately, sending him crumpling to the floor. His legs felt like foreign objects, uncooperative and weak. It took him several attempts to finally get to his feet, each movement a monumental effort. As he took his first tentative step across the room, the old wooden floorboards groaned beneath his weight. Creak, creak, creak. The sound was rhythmic, almost melodic in the oppressive silence. It sounded disturbingly like breathing, a slow, patient inhale and exhale that seemed to emanate from the very structure of the house. The door to the bedroom was slightly ajar, a dark sliver of the unknown. Peering through, he saw a long hallway stretching into the gloom. Both walls were lined with framed photographs, a gallery of forgotten faces. As he drew closer, he saw that the people in the pictures were blurred, their features distorted, as if the film inside the frames had melted under some intense, unseen heat. He stopped in front of one, his breath catching in his throat. The man in the photograph, it looked like him, but older, much older. His hair was streaked with gray, his eyes were tired and etched with lines of sorrow. Beside him stood a woman, her face a swirl of color, someone he didn't recognize at all. He stumbled back, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. At that exact moment, the single light bulb in the hallway flickered once, twice, and then plunged the hall into complete darkness. And from somewhere deep within the house, a clock began to tick, a loud, deliberate, and maddening sound in the otherwise dead air. Driven by a rising panic, he began to wander from room to room, his hands sliding along the walls, searching desperately for a way out, an exit, any escape from this place. But every window he looked through showed the exact same desolate scene, a gray, empty street, a single skeletal tree with barren branches, and an endless, impenetrable fog that blanketed everything beyond. There were no neighbors, no cars, no signs of life whatsoever. The air grew thicker, heavier, charged with something that wasn't quite silence. It was a faint, low hum, a vibration he could feel in his teeth, as though the house itself was alive, its massive lungs breathing in time with his own frantic gasps. He found his way into a kitchen. It was pristine, unnervingly clean, as if no one had prepared or eaten a meal there in decades. The counters shone, the appliances gleamed, but on the center of the wooden table sat a single glass of water. It was still cold to the touch, whisper, soft, intimate, and impossibly close. It was right behind him, a breath against the back of his neck. "You finally woke up." He spun around, a strangled cry escaping his lips, but there was no one there. The kitchen was empty. Only the heavy door of the refrigerator was slowly, silently creaking open all on its own. The faint hum he'd been hearing deepened into a low, vibrating moan, a sound so resonant it made his bones ache and his teeth hurt. He wasn't sure when it happened, but night had fallen, abruptly. One moment there was great daylight. The next, inky blackness pressed against the windows. The old clock on the wall, the one he'd heard ticking, began to malfunction. Its hands spun wildly, a blur of motion, ticking faster and faster, until it suddenly, jarringly, stopped. The hands pointed to 3 a.m., and then a new sound from upstairs. Footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging footsteps, as if someone was patiently making their way down towards him. "Hello," he called out again, his voice a little stronger this time, fueled by terror. "Who's there?" A whisper, like dry leaves skittering across pavement, floated down the stairs. "You've been gone a long time, Daniel." The name hit him like a shard of ice. He hadn't told anyone his name. He was certain he hadn't spoken it aloud. Or had he? Confusion warred with his fear. The house itself began to react. The walls seemed to stretch and warp, bending at impossible, nauseating angles. The very air flickered, and for a split second, the dusty, decaying room was replaced by another image. He saw stark white walls, a tangle of wires and humming machines, and he heard a faint, rhythmic beeping echoing in the distance. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. He was back in the haunted house. He pressed his palms to his temples, a headache blooming behind his eyes. "What's happening to me?" he groaned. The whisper returned, this time seeming to come from the ceiling right above him. "Remember." He stumbled away from the voice, backing into what looked like a living room. As he entered, the television set on a dusty stand turned on by itself. The screen filled with crackling static, a blizzard of white noise that was sharp and grating to his ears. Then, slowly, an image began to emerge from the chaos. It was a hospital bed. Monitors flanked it on either side, their screens displaying fluctuating lines and numbers, and in the bed lay a man, pale and utterly still. It was him, older, the same face from the photograph. A voice started to speak from the television speakers, a woman's voice, soft and choked with tears, yet somehow familiar. "Please, wake up." He stared at the screen, at the image of his own unmoving body, and screamed at it. "I am awake. I'm right here." But of course the woman couldn't hear him, because he could see her now, sitting in a chair beside his hospital bed, her head in her hands, weeping. The static roared back, swallowing the scene, and the screen went black. And then he heard it again, the sound from his momentary vision, faint, rhythmic, persistent, coming from somewhere far away, or perhaps from beneath the very floorboards of the house. Beep, beep, beep. He fell to his knees, clutching his head as the house began to dissolve around him. The walls blurred and twisted into shadows. The furniture melted away. Voices overlapped in his mind, dozens of whispers, all repeating his name. "You've been gone for 50 years. We kept waiting for you. You never came back." He gasped, and his eyes flew open again, this time to a blindingly bright, sterile light. The smell of antiseptic filled his nose. Machines surrounded him, their lights blinking. He felt the slight tug of tubes in his arms, and there it was, beside him, steady and real, the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor. A nurse stood at his bedside, her eyes wide, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Welcome back, Mr. Morgan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You've been in a coma since 1975. His throat tightened, a cold dread, far worse than anything he'd felt in the house, crawled over his skin, because on the far side of the hospital room, reflected in the large window, he could see it. The house, the one from his mind, a flickering, translucent image superimposed over the night sky. It was still there, waiting, breathing, and faintly, just barely audible through the hum of the life support machines, he heard it whisper one last terrible time, "You shouldn't have woken up."